What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have Tropical Storm Alberto. As of this morning, it is formed, it is organizing, and it is continuing to potentially strengthen before it makes landfall in Mexico. The system is already very huge. It's produced a lot of very heavy flooding across much of South Texas, and it is also producing a lot of storm surge in wherever it's going at this point. And we have videos on Twitter and everything like that kind of back it up. And we won't be going over those today, but we will be going over the analysis of this, as well as one other tropical system that I am paying attention to. So let's go ahead and dive right into it right here. First of all, look how large this tropical storm force wind field is, where we have tropical storm warnings all the way down from near Matagorda Bay and Houston area over here, all the way down to Mexico over here. This just shows how large this tropical storm is right here. We can go ahead and show you the public advisory. Tropical storm force winds extend outward 415 miles from the center. I have not seen that in a long time, especially with a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm. That's pretty impressive, and that's pretty crazy right there. This still has 15 hours over water. Definitely something to pay attention to right here, and we'll go ahead and give you some more information in the public advisory right there. Once again, tropical storm warning is in effect for Texas coast from San Luis Pass to the Rio Grande, and from the northeast coast of Mexico, from south of the Rio Grande to Tecoluta, and that means tropical storm warnings conditions are expected. It's a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm. It is expected to potentially strengthen a little bit more before it reaches land. Rapid weakening is expected due to land interaction, and Alberto is likely to dissipate over Mexico Thursday or Thursday night. Minimum central pressure is 995 millibars, which is crazy. That's crazy low for a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm, but a lot of it is because of the size of this tropical storm. This is a very massive tropical storm that we're dealing with. We have a lot of rainfall fall potential going on right there. 2 to 4 feet of storm surge in parts of Texas right there, so definitely something to keep an eye on. Let's go ahead and show you kind of what we're looking at least with the peak surge right here. Once again, 2 to 4 feet over here. Rainfall potential is still very much out there. We have Laredo still expected to get a ton of rain. Corpus Christi still getting a ton of rain. Brownsville getting a lot of rain. A lot of it's going to be in the mountainous regions of Mexico, which is absolutely the worst thing we can see right here. Primarily because it poses a huge threat for mudslides, landslides, everything like that right there. So this is definitely something we need to keep an eye on right here and right now. So that's what we're dealing with Tropical Storm Alberto. We can give you the final forecast before it makes landfall in just a little bit, but we have 2 other areas of interest we need to pay close attention to. We have a new area of interest in the Gulf of Mexico, and we have this area of interest, which has now become Invest 92L last time I checked, that is starting to organize and develop off the coast of the Bahamas over there. So here's what we have going on. An area of showers and thunderstorms located a few hundred miles associated with a surface trough or low pressure. They are marginally conducive for some development as it moves westward or northwestward. The system is forecast to reach the U.S. by Friday. 20% chance of formation in the next 48 hours and 20% chance of formation in the next 7 days. It was 10 and 20 last time we talked about this. Now it is 20% and 20%, with satellite imagery showing that this thing is organizing and trying to develop out there. So we'll have to pay very close attention to that, as this could pose a big threat to Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas over here. Primarily a flooding threat, but wind is not out of the question based on these warm waters that we are dealing with right here. Now let's go ahead and go to this area of interest right there. That's been kind of piquing my interest, to be honest with you, right here, because we're looking at possible back-to-back tropical storms right here, going into the Bay of Campeche, organizing and developing, and then causing a lot of impacts to Texas, Mexico, maybe even Louisiana if it moves far enough east. Definitely something to keep an eye on right here. Another broad area of low pressure is forecast to develop over the southwestern Gulf, this weekend. They're expected to be conducive for gradual development. The conditions are 30% chance of formation in the next 7 days, nothing in the next 48 hours. It's expected to organize and develop off the gyre and then move into the Gulf of Mexico And we'll just have to see what happens from there. But regardless, we have a lot more to talk to you about today. We're going to look at the conditions for not just Alberto to see how quickly this can intensify, but as well as the Invest 92L in that area of interest, because what tropical systems usually do is if they get strong enough, it's essentially going to leave what is known as a cold wake, which is kind of an isolated area of water that is much cooler and been affected by a tropical cyclone. What tropical cyclones typically do is they tend to cool the waters around them if they are strong enough or stay over there long enough. So let's go ahead and show you what we're potentially looking at. There's really no quote-unquote cold wake going on right now. This is primarily because Alberto is only a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm. This is only and yes, it is a very large tropical storm, but the winds aren't very strong. A lot of the rain is not over the water. It's inland in Texas, in Mexico over there, so that's not leaving anything. Overall, what I'm seeing with this is Alberto is not making a dent in these global sea temperatures right there. It's not making a dent in the ocean heat content for that exact same reason. And that's going to be concerning when that next area of interest moves through and we start to see some stuff organizing and developing in the next few days afterward. As for what we're looking with Invest 92L, it's in around 27 to 28 degrees Celsius waters right now, and that's expected to remain about the same. But the fact that we're already looking at a tropical system this far to the north in 2024 is pretty insane to me, if you think about it, because we have extremely warm water for this time of the year right there, and things are getting pretty intense going into this. And the fact that this thing is organizing and developing, and not any of the models are picking up on this, that means we're going to have to nowcast this thing right now, and we're going to have to rely a lot less on the computer models, at least for the next couple of days or so, as this thing starts to organize and develop. And the ocean heat content all three of these areas of interest is going into is also relatively large, at least compared to other seasons at this time of the year. As for Alberto, it's over waters of about 75 to 100 degree OHC, which essentially is a measurement of how hot the water is and how deep down it goes. So we're looking at some pretty deep 30-plus degrees Celsius waters with this right there. So we're going to have to pay attention to all of that, and we're going to have to pay even more attention to that, because once this new area of interest and once this new tropical system starts to organize and develop, the conditions with this compared to Alberto, they're going to be relatively the same, except we're looking at a lot more of a concentrated cell at this point. It's not going to be as large as Alberto. It's going to be quite a bit smaller than that, and it's going to allow for a more concentrated pressure gradient and possibly allow for faster development if that continues right there. So that's what we were dealing with the OHC in the Gulf of Mexico. As for the Atlantic Basin, where 92L is, it's in around an area of 25 to 50 OHC right there. Doesn't sound like very much when you think about it just on the first glance, but considering that this is mid-June right now, it's June 19th, 2024 right now, and we're seeing OHC values of that far north away from the equator, like 30 degrees north, that's something very concerning to take a look at right there, and that raises some concerns of just kind of how far north this area of OHC is going to go to this season, because last season, waters didn't cool off very much in the Caribbean Sea. Waters didn't cool off as much as we were hoping to in the main development region. The question is now, how far north is this going to push? And we'll only get to know the answer of that once we get into late July, early August, is when we will get a better idea of that, and that's something I'm paying very close attention to. Water temperatures are still surging in the North Atlantic Ocean right now. They have slowed down a little bit. They're kind of matching where we were at in 2023. However, I do fully expect this to surge and possibly surpass 2023. I really do not want to see that, because what we're going to end up seeing is more ocean heat content than before, and the greater possibility for this stuff to organize and develop right here. Here's what we're looking at with the wind shear right here. Let's go ahead and show you the wind shear for a lot of these areas. Where 92L is in a pocket of low wind shear, which is what is explaining this quick organization and development, and kind of explains the increase in probability in the short term right there. Alberto is in an area of very low wind shear. A lot of the wind shear issues cleared out just in time for this thing to finally get its act together and become our first named system of the 2024 hurricane season on June 19th. I know that's a little late, but it's not the latest start I have seen in a long time. I mean, we had Andrew in late August of 1992, for example, right there. So overall, this isn't the latest start to the season, and this is kind of reminding me a lot of a 2017-ish vibe right there, because it started off really slow. I mean, we did have Arlene to start off with when it comes to, it being an April storm, and then June, things started slowly happening with Brett and everything like that, and then Cindy started to happen, and then Dawn was in July. And then things started to escalate in August and September. This is giving me 2017 vibes, essentially. Question is, in regards to the forecast, is how will this persist through much of the time the new AOI gets through? Answer is most likely yes. And like I said before, we're looking at about the same, if not even better conditions for the new area of interest to organize and develop. Again, we will have a tighter pressure gradient. We'll have a low wind shear area. We'll have some high wind shear to the east of it, but that's going to help the ventilation and the outflow out. So that's going to definitely be something to pay attention to. And we're still going to have those 30 plus degrees Celsius waters, or 86 plus degree Fahrenheit waters, for those of you tuning in from the United States, from Texas, and everything like that. So we'll have to pay very close attention to all of that right there. Let's go ahead and pull up the shear and moisture forecast to kind of show you what I'm talking about. And then we'll get into some models, first on Alberto very quickly, and then we'll get to the rest of the operational models about the new area of interest, because a lot of the models aren't picking up on 92L. It's something we're going to have to nowcast. But here's what we have going on with the wind shear right here. Wind shear is going to persist as this thing makes landfall in Mexico. Still going to bring very heavy impacts to Texas and everything like that. And then you're going to start seeing a bit of an increase of wind shear, at least temporarily, and then as this system starts to move into the Bay of Campeche over there, the wind shear just starts collapsing, and there's a lot weaker wind shear here than there was with Alberto right there, which that could help or allow it for organization and development right there. So that's definitely something we're going to have to pay attention to right there. There is a bit of stronger wind shear over Florida and those areas, but that's going to be relatively isolated compared to what we are seeing right here, or just have this massive bulk of shear right there. So that could actually help it organize and develop even more into maybe a potentially stronger system than what we're seeing with Alberto. NHC wants this thing to go up to 45 miles per hour. Personally, I'm thinking it'll go up to 50, maybe 60 miles per hour if it rapidly organizes and continues to do that and develop and all that stuff. But still something to pay attention to, at least for the current time, as we look at more data and as we look at more information going on right about now. So that's what we're dealing with the shear forecast. A lot weaker shear across much of the Gulf of Mexico than we were seeing with Alberto. Definitely could help with organization and development with this new area of interest. Moisture component to all this. There is going to be a little bit of dry air that intrudes into the Gulf of Mexico, but don't expect that to persist for very long. You have another huge infusion of moisture across much of the Gulf of Mexico, and that's going to allow for the system to organize and develop. It's not nearly as moist of a pack. I wouldn't say not nearly as. It's not as moist. It's maybe about, I'd say the humidity is maybe like 5 to 10% lower than that. Still going to be enough for organization and development regardless of all those factors right there. So that's definitely something we're going to take a look at, looking into the future. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and show you what our latest models are going for with Tropical Storm Alberto. Here is the H-Wharf right there, typically the most aggressive one. The H-Wharf wants this thing as a 989 millibar system as it makes landfall. Right now it's 995, so I can definitely see that happening in 15 hours or so. Here's what we have when it comes to the main sea level pressure and wind right there. It has the winds around 60 miles per hour as it makes landfall, still produces a lot of flash flooding regardless, and eventually it's going to dissipate over Mexico right there. Overall, I'm not too worried about all of that right now. Let's go ahead and show you the HMON model. HMON has been very aggressive as of late, but it gets down to 990, makes landfall. Let's go ahead and take a look at the main sea level pressure. has this thing getting around 45 to 50 miles per hour or so. That's kind of what the official forecasts are doing at this current point, as it makes landfall, causes a lot of flash flooding and a lot of damage to a lot of the areas over there, and it eventually dissipates, kind of what all the other models are forecasting, and that's what happens when you have land interaction. And now for the halves A model, this thing organizes in a little bit, gets down to about 989 millibars before making landfall. I actually want to check the main sea level pressure right there. I should honestly start off this. Yeah, once again, we're looking at maybe 60 miles per hour, maybe 65 if it wants to push it that far. Still is going to cause a lot of heavy flooding regardless, so definitely something to pay attention to. Flash flooding is going to be the main threat. Storm surge is definitely going to be also a threat for those in Texas. So just a heads up on that right now. Now with the halves B model, this thing starts to organize. It actually gets a pretty decent pressure gradient, pretty decent structure on it right now. And we do see a bit of a potential eye wall organizing and developing, which I think is interesting. Still has it making landfall with winds around 60 miles per hour. But regardless, this is definitely something you need to pay very close attention to as we continue to look into this right now. So that's being done with Tropical Storm Alberto. Main threat's going to be flooding. That's what I'm paying attention to right now. What I'm also paying attention to as well is, the new area of interest. Now, the new area of interest, the computer models have it as a relatively weak cyclone. I don't blame them at this current point. I personally think that could possibly get up to a tropical storm myself, and maybe a strong tropical storm if we want to push it a little bit further. It is June after all, and we are going to be moving through the best conditions of June. They have been persisting for quite some time. This thing organizes and develops according to the European, stays around tropical depression to weak tropical storm strength as it makes landfall near the U.S.-Mexico border at the mouth of the Rio Grande right there. Next model we'll show you is the GFS. As this thing's starting to organize and develop, it has it making landfall in about 200 miles south of the U.S.-Mexico border near Veracruz, at around tropical storm strength right there. So that's kind of what the models are suggesting right now. Let's go ahead and show you the CMC as well. CMC has this thing pushing further to the south near Veracruz for a little bit, and then it kind of does a similar situation right there. Gets down to about 1,000 millibars, which put it at a mid-grade tropical storm right there, and everything like that. So definitely something to pay attention to. I'd say the main threat with all of this is going to be flooding, because a lot of the areas that are being impacted by Alberto right now are going to get even more rain on top of that. And because the ground's saturated and everything like that, it's going to cause ultimately even worse flash flooding if this scenario does play out right here. So that's the CMC right there, or Canadian. NavGem, we can go ahead and show you that. NavGem wants this thing as a tropical depression, or not even just a low, an open wave right there. So that's going to be interesting to take a look at. Icon model, what we have going on with that, we do have a closed low, and we have a tropical depression or tropical storm making landfall near the U.S.-Mexico border right there. So we'll have to pay attention to that. But the key difference is this is going to be a smaller situation, a smaller system than what we were seeing with Tropical Storm Alberto. So this is all stuff I'm going to continue to keep an eye on. We are looking at a looming threat this hurricane season, and I will keep you updated on all of that here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. With that being said, we're closing the video out right here. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Remember, we are trying to get to 10,000 subscribers by my birthday, which is July 17th. I would really appreciate that if you did that. Already, we've gotten well over 100 subscribers in the last 24 hours that have subbed, so thank you very much, and I hope to continue that trend as we continue to forecast these hurricanes and these tropical cyclones for you. Be sure to leave a like. Once again, it helps me out, helps me make more videos like these. The goal of this channel is to get more people engaged with weather, and if you want to come help us out at Storms United, or you just want to kind of see the behind the scenes or just have a little fun with us, be sure to join the Storms United Discord server. Link to that is right over there. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.